Well, for 20 years, I worked for the insurance industry in a specialized area of life insurance. And if we got 5 years of medical records on you and 5 years of demographic data, and we could tell the insurance company how long you had to live to the month. And it is some of the most accurate science in the world. In fact, the new variable basic tables on mortality are based on a lot of the research that came from this industry. And, when we talk about predicting mortality to the month, remember that life insurance companies have some of the most voluminous databases in the world, hundreds of millions of lives, and they have information that no other database has. I mean, if you look at the medical community and research foundations and universities and even the CDC and the FDA, the information that insurance companies have that nobody else has as voluminous is they know the day, the date, the time, the location, and the cause of death for anybody that they have insured, right? On life insurance. And not only do they know the day, date, time, location, and cause of death, but they also know all of the medications that person was on. They know their family history. They know their demographic data. They know their financial history. They have intimate knowledge of their medical records. And in fact, usually before the policy was issued, they even did their own blood testing. So they didn't just put that person on a mortality curve, like an actuarial curve. They were able to drill in on their specific mortality because they know liver enzymes and kidney poison levels and this level of anemia at this age and this history of smoking and this genetic predisposition, that all of these conditions, which are called mortality factors, put into the same body, combined with something called comorbidity factors, led to this causality of death. And if you add this pharmaceutical, it accelerates. If you add this pharmaceutical, it elongates. And so that data of knowing the date of expiration, if you will, on so many lives and triangulating that back into the medical record is how you become so accurate with your predictions. And if you want to know how accurate insurance companies are, just look at what happened in the 2008, 2009 financial crisis. We had, 364 banks fail? Not a single life insurance company failed. Not one. Right? I mean, we're going through the 16th money-centered bank now that they said is in financial trouble after the Silicon Valley Bank. You haven't heard that from one life insurance company. In fact, had it not been for the life insurance division of AIG, the credit derivatives side of the business would have sucked the entire company under. And so these are some of the most solvent and profitable and stable institutions in the world. And what do? They take risk that no other financial institution takes. No angel investor, no venture capital firm, no hedge fund, no investor of any sort would ever put that kind of risk on a single variable. I mean, when a life insurance company puts 25 million or 50 million or 75 or 100 million, which was very common in my industry, of risk on one life, they're betting on one variable. How many more months does this person have left on earth? And so if you really follow life insurance trends and mortality trends, you'll find out where the real science is going. So for example, watch what happens to the pricing on vaccinated, boosted, double boosted, triple boosted patients. Watch what happens to the table ratings on those patients, and to the point where they
you believe it's going to shorten?
Oh, there's no question. I mean, as you add vaccines and add boosters, you will become further and further and further table rated because they have the data. I mean, they were onto the opioid crisis long before.
They won't admit that probably.
Well,
publicly.
They're certainly not going to publicly admit that, but have two 55-year-old males apply for the same life insurance policy with virtually identical blood work, virtually identical genetic histories and financial circumstances. One's going to be rated table 3, one's going to get standard insurance, and the major variable is going to be.
What's table 3 versus standard?
Table 3 is a table rating, means it's a more expensive level of insurance versus a cheaper level of insurance. It's very likely that you'll start to see those table ratings increase.
So somebody smokes, somebody drinks alcohol, somebody has high blood sugar.
Right.
Those are all factors.
Yeah. What we call morbidity factors, right? So if you're morbidly obese, you get a debit. If you have type 2 diabetes, you get a debit. If you have hypertension, you get a debit. But if you're a morbidly obese, hypertensive, diabetic, now you put all these into the same body. We know that this is not a 1 + 1 + 1 = 3. It's 1 + 1 + 1 = 10. Right? These are called comorbidity factors, and they're cumulative. And so they accelerate mortality. We know things like the trajectory of certain pharmaceuticals, right? I mean, we know that modern medicine, according to a 2018 Johns Hopkins study and Harvard study, that modern medicine is the the practice of medicine, medical error is the third leading cause of death in America. So it's astounding when you think that modern medicine and medical error is the third leading cause of death. I mean, only cancer and cardiovascular disease kill more people than modern medicine. They kill more people than morbid obesity and diabetes combined.
So I guess what you're saying is the actual. Are you saying doctors or big pharma?
Well, I'm saying modern medicine, which includes physicians and big pharma, but it's driven, a lot of it's driven.
I know there's a lot of distrust about modern medicine.
Well, I mean, look at the industry of disease. I mean, in the United States, diabetes alone, type 2 diabetes, is a $110 billion annual industry. So if you think there's boardroom meetings going on right now to try to put that out of business, you're crazy. And for a long period of time, I used to say, well, if you were a client of mine and you said, Gary, write me a diet that would guarantee I would get diabetes, I used to take you right to the American Diabetic Association website and show you dietary guidelines for people that can't regulate blood sugar. But my whole point is not to attack modern medicine. My point is that we know that that medical error, misdiagnoses is common. What insurance companies knew was the consequences for these misdiagnoses. So for example, if you have a clinical deficiency in the vitamin D3, if you have a clinical deficiency in D3 for long enough, you will present with rheumatoid arthritis-like symptoms. Now, you don't have rheumatoid arthritis, but you have the very same symptoms. You're stiff and achy when you wake up in the morning. The soles of your feet and your ankles hurt when you get out of bed first thing in the morning. You get stiff across the hips and shoulders, and eventually it becomes hard to make a fist. If you walk into the wrong doctor's office and start to explain that symptomology, the doctor's going to go, you know what, Eric, you got rheumatoid arthritis. I'm going to hit you with some high-dose prednisone. I'm going to start you on something called a corticosteroid. And initially, these things are anti-inflammatory, but we knew in the life insurance industry that if you started corticosteroids, you had 6 years and 1 day until you were having a joint replacement. So that meant that I would artificially, if you were a 60-year-old male, I would artificially advance your age 6 years to age 66. I would schedule the joint replacement, right? Even though you're only 60, I would schedule it for your 66th birthday. And then I would begin to reduce what was called your ambulatory profile, how well you ambulate, how well you move. And as I reduced your mobility, I would bring in all the diseases that exacerbate with reduced mobility. And so as I bring in diseases that would exacerbate with reduced mobility, I could not only predict the onset of, but the severity of disease and how quickly you would succumb to it. So if you think about a scenario where somebody's body is just deficient in a basic raw material, vitamin D3, the sunshine vitamin, the only vitamin human beings can make on our own, right? Arguably the single most important compound in the human body. You deplete this nutrient from human beings, they present with a condition they don't have. They're diagnosed with a disease that they do not have. They're put on a medication that's not required, which causes them to have a joint replacement that they never needed, which reduces their ability to be mobile, which brought diseases forward that they never would have had. And they end up succumbing to a disease early because of a misdiagnosis of a single missing raw material in the human body.